Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Everquest Old School. And tonight we are on my, let's see, Shaman, who's level 4, almost level 5, actually, just 2 more bubbles to go. And we're going to be over here killing goblins. Now, the reason I wanted to log on this guy is it's been a while since I've actually played this character, and for the most part, I love zones with snow in them. And so I just kind of wanted a little change of pace just to see a little bit of snow because I never get to see it in real life. Most of you guys are very, very lucky, and you get snow once a year, maybe every couple years or something like that. Because I live over in the Houston area, I've only ever seen it really twice in my entire life, and neither one of those I would actually call snow. It fell for about 5 minutes, but melted the moment it hit the ground, and that's the extent of snow that I've actually seen in real life. It's kind of unfortunate. So I do like to see it in video games. I love to see it in movies and video clips and things of that sort. So yeah, I definitely wanted to log on here real quick. He's gonna get the other guy, isn't he? Dang it. Actually, I was gonna say, man, I don't know why that guy's not attacking. That's a pretty low aggro radius. There we go. Now, I do have a few buffs on me. Some really high-level guy kind of ran by and tossed some, the Spirit of the Wolf, but he also tossed, where is it? Storm Strength, which is really nice. And then he also tossed, where is it right there? Skin-like Nature. And I did have a damage shield for like half an hour or something like that, so not bad. This is actually going a lot quicker with those buffs than without them, obviously. So I'll show you what my stats are real quick. I don't have any great armor. In fact, most of my slots are still empty at level 4, which is okay. I mean, some of you may have watched some of my videos with my Shadow Knight, and he is definitely twinked out. He has a lot more than most characters will at that level. And he's hitting for around, I think, 20 points of damage every hit on the ones that he actually lands. Now, just because you have better armor and better weapons doesn't necessarily mean that your hits will still land on the target. He has just the same amount of chance of missing as he does hitting with pretty much any weapon. Now, as your skill goes up and the level of the creature you're fighting goes down, you obviously have a better chance of hitting the creature. And so when you're trying to take on a creature that may be yellow or red, even if you have the armor and the weapons that could kill him, you have to take into account that most of the fight may be spent sitting there missing the creature, and you may end up losing because of that. But, you know, it definitely helps out a whole lot more to have the armor than it does, and I'm not trying to make it sound like don't spend the money and don't buy the armor. You know, if you have the extra cash, yeah, go ahead and do it. But again, at a low level, chances are you are not going to have the cash to spend on weapons and armor, because most of the cash you have is going to be spent on saving up to buy your next level spells, unless of course you're one of those few classes that don't get spells very often, like a Shadow Knight doesn't get them very often, Paladin doesn't get their spells very often, or if you play a warrior, you have nothing to save up for because you will never get a spell. It's not like other games like Everquest 2, where warriors get their little cheat, which is like a combat art, which is basically a spell by another name. And they can do, things like spinning around and flying kicks and stuff like that. Monks do kind of get a few things that could maybe be considered a spell in the sense of a combat art. They get the kick and the flying art, flying spin or something like that. They also, for Shadow Knights and pretty much any melee class, they get the ability to use a shield and bash. So I guess in a sense that could also be considered one, but it doesn't take any power to cast. And I don't think you even have a power bar. No, I think you do have a power bar. It's just you're not going to use it as a warrior. Let me grab this stuff. There's another gnoll. Where's he going? A gnoll pup. You're dead, man. These guys used to kill me all the time when I first got here back in the day. They were friggin' crazy, man. You would be running around looking for anything to kill because there was so many people on, and you'd happen upon a couple of these guys, and they would seem very, very easy. You know, it would just be one of them roaming around until you started the fight, and then all of a sudden another one would come out of nowhere, and then another one would come out of nowhere, and you'd really... Oh, I just lost my Spirit of the Wolf. I was like, why am I going so slow now? There I'm gonna feel like I'm going at a snail's pace from now on. That's one of the problems with getting any kind of buff, whether it's Spirit of the Wolf or Breeze or Clarity, that increases your power regeneration. When you lose it, the game dramatically slows down, and you feel it so much more. The same thing when you go to a regular level to a heck level. You're just like, whoa, what just happened here, right? It's like you're used to it taking an hour and a half to get a bubble, and all of a sudden it's taking 4 hours to get a bubble, or even longer. And it's noticeable. And when it's noticeable like that, let's see, I guess they're not going to respawn here quick enough for me to kill them. I don't know what the spawn timer is on this. I think it's like 7 minutes, 7 or 8 minutes. It's not a whole lot of time, but depending on your level and depending on how fast you can kill, you may not want to stay and wait for the repop. You may just run over to another camp and pull it that way. Again, it really greatly depends on the server you're playing on and how crowded it is. If it's really, really crowded, you don't really want to lose your camp by running away, because the other camp is already going to be there. Somebody's going to be there killing it, and if you leave your tents there for a few minutes, it opens it up to anybody who wants it. And there usually will be 2 or 3 people sitting there waiting to get into the group. So you usually won't have a camp all to yourself. And if you do, it's kind of greedy and people won't really appreciate it too much. They'd greatly appreciate you just inviting them into the group and doing it as a group. It's safer. You just never know what level creatures are going to pop up in that area. There's always a range. You can have anything from like level 1 to level 5. Well, if you're level 3, level 1, 2, and 3, maybe even level 4 would be pretty good. But on occasion, you will have the entire camp pop the highest level creatures they can have. And they will do it all at the exact same time. And so fighting, 4, 5, or 6 level 5s, they're going to wipe the floor with you. And that's only if you're level 3, you might actually be able to handle it. If you're like level 2 and you're fighting these creatures, and of course you go in there and, for the most part, they're even or blue to you, and then all of a sudden something pops and they're all red and they're 3 levels higher than you, you're going to have a problem. And so if you have extra people with you when that happens, you're able to actually still clear the camp. There's other areas that kind of do the same thing on a more drastic scale, like over in the Oasis of Mar, you have giants that people can kill around level 35. Every so often, after you've killed the giants enough, you have a chance of spawning one of the named giants. And the named giant over there is really, really tough. He actually has, I think it's like a 350 or 250 health regeneration tick, which is like every 2 seconds or something like that. So unless you're doing more damage than that every 2 seconds, you're not going to actually be able to do any damage to him. He's going to be regenerating so quickly. And so even though you can take giants on at that level very easily if you're killing those things, when that guy spawns, basically you can't do it. You need a group to do it. And that's when it comes in handy to have extra people with you. I know you got to share the experience, but this is a multiplayer game, and it's very built on the community, and sharing a little bit of experience and going a little bit slower to be safer is usually your best bet, because when you die, the penalty in this game for dying is so great that you just don't ever want to do it again. You don't want to waste, especially at a low level when you know there's no chance of you getting a res. Clerics don't get a res or revive actually until I think 29, and that one gives you no experience back. Basically, that one is used so that you can get back to your corpse as fast as possible. So if you're bound, 15, 20 zones away, you can still have the cleric cast that on you. You're not going to get a whole lot in return in the way of experience. In fact, you're getting nothing in return, but you are saving yourself that trip back, which could, depending on how far away you are, save you an hour and a half run. And that in itself will give you an hour and a half to earn more experience, because now you're back with your group. So it's usually worth it for you to use that. I have seen people not accept a revive simply because they believe that they could actually in the future get a res, and I believe the way it used to work was you can only get one. So if I give you a revive, you can't get experience from a res. Although I know the body can be rezzed several times, and you can be zapped back to it, because I know people will do that. so they can get back to they leave a body there, so that they can keep getting like rezzed, and they can go to town, and then the cleric can res them, and they can get back really, really quickly or something like that. But most of the time when they did that, they would put a fresh body down with a duel, is what they would do. They will duel somebody in the group. They would allow that other person to kill them. Of course, they will respawn wherever their spawn point is. They don't have anything on them, but they're able to like run back to town, buy some food, or pick some stuff up from the bank, then get the res or the revive, actually, because again, if you do a duel, you don't lose any experience, at least not in blue. And P99, they're red. I'm sure there's a penalty of some sort because that's a PvP server, but over here you don't lose anything. So people would do that as kind of a little cheat, a little quick way to get back to town, especially if you're in a really, really hard to get area in a zone, say like the Golden Afridi room, which takes a fair bit of time to kind of work your way into. And a lot of the time people would stay there for a great deal of the day. I mean, they would go there not for like 1 or 2 hours, but they would go there for 6, 7, 8 hours. And sometimes it wasn't something that was planned. It was like a couple of your friends logged on. You guys went over to, Solus B, and you're kind of hanging out there, and you got a few of the right people, and you're like, hey, let's go do the Golden Afridi room because, those boots sell for quite a bit of money, and pretty much every class wants them because they add, I can't say if it was 9 AC or more, but it's a decent amount of AC. It adds 9 strength, or not strength, the 9 wisdom and 9 intelligence. So pretty much every wisdom class wants it, and every intelligent class wants it. So you'll have Shadow Knights and Paladins both using it. You'll have Clerics using it. It's a very, very sought-after set of boots. And when you're there, like I said, you're there for a long time. And if you weren't planning on it and you don't have the right classes with you, if you run out of food, that could be a problem. Because again, in this game, if you don't have food and water, your health and power will stop regenerating. And after a certain point, that would be the end of it. And so if everybody in your group is very low on power, that's a technique that I've seen people use to send somebody back to town, buy as much food as they can carry, then res them back. Especially, I mean, if you have a cleric to res you, chances are he can just use a little bit of his power to summon some burned bread and some disgusting water for you to drink. But on occasion, there's a reason for you to go back to town. Maybe you have something in the bank, or just you need to go do something real quick, and that allows you to do that. It's not really used too often though, but it is a technique that is there for you at your disposal, and I have seen people use it here and there. Not again, it's not a common occurrence, but yeah, I kind of wanted to come over here because I just love the snow, and you can kind of see it falling now. It doesn't always fall. It's kind of like one of those things where you have to wait for it, and when it does fall, this one is kind of light. I've actually seen it kind of heavy snow before, where it's kind of difficult to actually see where you're going. And rain will do the same thing. The rain will come in, and you'll actually see the fog rolling in with it, and that will very much hamper what you're able to see in this game. And for some people, they hate that. I know my brother, he played a druid, and anytime the rain came in, he would use, I believe it was a pearl, was the gem you had to have to cast the spell, and it would end the rain. He would actually be able to stop the rain with that spell. It's kind of expensive. A pearl's not cheap, and most people will only use it if they absolutely have to, if you're traveling in the zone at the time. But because he always hung out, I think it was like Burning Woods, for a very, very long time, because at that level it just takes so long to level by yourself, and he soloed all the way up to max level. But he'd be hanging out over there, and he'd be doing, his little figure 8. Actually, it's a giant figure 8 in the woods when he was pulling his creature, and he would just, he'd cast snare on it, he'd dot it, and then he'd root it if he wanted to, but most of the time he just ran it around when he had to. And because he did it that way, he needed to be able to see where he was going. And when the rain came in, you couldn't really see more than like 20 feet in front of your face. And so there was always that chance that as he ran around his figure 8, he would, pick up a roamer, and that could be very, very devastating for him. In fact, most of the time it was. If he picked up something he wasn't planning on, chances are he was going to die. And he got really good there towards the end before we really stopped playing, where he wouldn't die but maybe once a week. When he first showed up to the zone, I remember at the end of the day, he would, send me a tell, and he'd be like, "Hey, any chance you got some time when you're done to come over and give me a res?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll show up over there when I'm getting ready to log off, and I'll res all your corpses and stuff." And I would show up, and there'd be like 15, 20 corpses there just waiting for me, and I would res all his corpses, and he'd be like, "Ding!" He had lost so much experience. He either lost the level, or the experience he gained in the meantime waiting for the res, was enough to push him over the edge. And that's saying something, because again, it takes so long to level at that point. But yeah, it definitely pays to have a friend who's a cleric, who you're on good terms with, especially as a druid. It's kind of easy, to be honest, because a druid can bind themselves in pretty much any location, and because they can do that, they can bind themselves exactly where they're hunting, in a safe, area of that space, and then teleport out to a zone and go pick up the cleric and, teleport him wherever he needs to go. And basically, you're trading services. It's not easy to get around in this game, and having a druid who's friendly as a cleric is very nice, because clerics, for the most part, are pretty slow. I don't know if there's actually anything to it as far as like initial base run speed, but I have noticed that with my Shadow Knight, he runs so much faster than pretty much any of my other characters that I think there is, because he, in a group, obviously you kind of have to be the guy who runs faster, because you're going to be the guy pulling. And so I understand why they did it, but when you're running with your group, I've always noticed that my Shadow Knight was the one in the front every single time. And even when he stopped to let other people catch up with him, he'd still always pull ahead of everybody else. And I don't know if just everybody else is constantly running around overweight, or over encumbered, or again, that he has like a higher base run speed or something. But as a Shadow Knight, or any race or class that has to pull, you got to be very, very aware of your weight and try not to exceed it, because again, that will lower some of your stats, your agility, dexterity, things of that sort. And of course, it will make you slower getting away from the enemy, which means you'll take more hits than you would have otherwise. And that could be very, very disastrous, depending on the zone you're pulling in. And I've talked about it before, because it's just one of my favorite zones that I remember very, very fondly, which is Lower Guck, and pulling from the living side all the way over to the undead side. That run, if you don't have, a good run speed, you're not even going to make it halfway. And I used to make that run constantly, over and over and over again, and just pull these incredibly long pulls, like 5 or 6 minute long pulls, which is not something you're going to do very often. 5 or 6 minutes is a very, very long pull to have creatures running on you, and it's a long distance. And in this game, they tried to make it where not every square inch was packed with mobs, but a pretty decent amount. And so if you're running that long of a distance, you're going to be running past a ton of mobs in the process. And the only reason I was ever able to do that was because, again, the zone was so camped that if you're careful and the groups that are camping certain areas are in the right spot, you can pull mobs right past them and not train them, because they're in a little cubby hole, and you'll be pulling down a hallway right past their room. And as long as they're not coming out of the room at the wrong time, they're not going to get hit by your train, which is, technically what it is. That's what any pull is a train, but it's controlled. It's a controlled train in the right direction, and hopefully it doesn't get away from you. Sometimes, paving will really kind of mess you up, and that's just one of those things where even if you know the zone really, really well, a mob can occasionally do something completely unexpected that they've never done before. They go down just a little bit over to the left or a little bit over to the right, and they get stuck. And because they get stuck, now they're going to do something that you did not want them to do, and that you're going to greatly regret probably pretty soon. They're gonna train you in a pretty horrible fashion, especially with the pool that long. And so there's dangers to really going above and beyond and further out from where you should be at. And at these low levels, you don't really have to worry about these low levels. Is pretty much fight right where you're at. These are the goblins. I don't even have to pull them away from the camp. This is something you would never do at a higher level, which is fight them in the actual spot that they spawn, because unless you're keeping up with the spawn timer, and I mean, you kind of will at higher levels find one room that has a named in it, and you will sit in there. But usually it's like three mobs that will spawn there, and you're gonna pull a little bit away from where the named is, because that's usually not a mob you want to get willy nilly. The other three mobs you could probably handle by themselves or even together if they spawn in an inappropriate time that you weren't prepared for. Maybe you already pulled two and then those three guys spawn. Depending on the group makeup, you could handle that. But usually with the name, because they're so much tougher and they usually have some kind of special ability as far as like they heal themselves, or they cast a whole bunch of stuns or area effects, or they just have so much more hit points and they do so much more damage that it's one of those things where you want to be prepared for that. Oh wow, I got this guy right here. I didn't even know there's one that spawned out here. Now, when the game first came out, this guy who spawns right here would have been a camp. There would have been at least one person sitting here, maybe two people sitting here, sharing this one spawn, waiting for him to pop up and killing any of the roamers that kind of walked around. That's how many people were on on this game, that there's literally nothing for people to kill. And that's why they came out with instances that at the time I thought was a great idea, because again, there was so little for you to kill. Even if you wanted to go off in solo, there really wasn't anything there for you. You had to wait to find one spot. And again, that guy may spawn every 10 or 15 minutes, and you're just sitting here waiting, looking at the wall for 10 or 15 minutes because everything else is camped. And you're actually very grateful that you have that spawn, because there's people sitting around doing nothing, waiting for their turn to be able to get into a spot like that. So yeah, it was kind of ridiculous there for a while, but I think it added to the zones, because I remember that. I remember the zones being so camped, and of course at the time it wasn't one of those, oh, this is awesome, right? It was like, oh, this sucks, right? I can't get into a group. I can't find anything to do. What am I supposed to do? But again, because it was that bad, anytime one of your friends said, hey, let's go do something, you're like, heck yeah, let's go do it, right? Because I don't have anything else to do. And anytime I try to find a group, I always have to sit on the waiting list. So if you want to put something together with a whole bunch of other people who are tired of sitting there at the zone entrance, even if I have to travel like an hour and a half out of my way to some zone I've never been to and risk dying, it's a whole lot better than sitting there staring at a wall. And so I was always up for trying new adventures and new places. And, I look at games nowadays that have just come out, and like Everquest 2 is kind of one of those games where you can find so much experience so easily that when somebody says, hey, do you want to go do something? I'm usually like, I'm kind of already in the middle of something. Let me finish what I'm doing over here, and when I get my next level, then, maybe I can come over there and try that out. And it kind of stops you from exploring and taking the chance, because you have something good already where you're at. When you don't have anything good, you don't mind taking the chance because you're not going to lose anything. But I don't know, it just seems like you kind of have to be that difficult. You kind of have to force people into a position like that. I think this guy just does not want to move. He's been here the whole time. I think he's stuck. But that guy will wipe the floor with me. You got to watch out with those skeletons. Occasionally you'll find ones that are not the decaying ones, but they look exactly like them. And so, if you're not careful with that, they will just one-shot you. And that's another reason you want to make sure you con everything you attack. Even at higher levels, get used to conning everything. The only time you can relax and not con things is when you're in a room that you're camping and you're very, very familiar with the area that you're in. Because again, like I said, the creatures do have a level range for rooms, for hallways, for pretty much any spawn. And so once you get used to the area, once you know that, okay, there's nothing here that's really going to cause me any issues, then you can just go ahead and pull anything you see. But until you get to that point, it's very dangerous to do something like that, because especially for a group, the Shadow Knight may know that, okay, I can take on anything in this group, or anything in this zone. But does he realize that when somebody new joins his group, they may be such a low level that trying to take on that creature now is not a good idea. So he needs to be aware of what level ranges the creatures are, and what level range the people in his group are. Because he may do exceptionally well in one group, leave that group, and go join another one, and do incredibly horrible, because the people in his group are so low level that they're just not able to hit the creature as often. They're not able to heal him as as good as the last cleric was and keep up with the heals. So I mean, it changes. So it's one of those things where you just really want to be aware of your surroundings. You can't just kind of muddle through the game and not be paying attention. This is one that will very, very harshly punish you for not paying attention. Again, with the death, with the experienced death, and of course just running back to your corpse. That's a nightmare in some places. And I talk very fondly about corpse runs because I've said some of the best times I've had in this game were from like the crazy and zany trouble that I had to get into and ask other people, complete strangers, to help me out with something just because I died in such a weird little spot. And it's funny too because in certain areas when you go off exploring and you die in just like the strangest area and you can't get your body back and you have to actually ask other people to help you out, they'd be like, what the heck were you even doing over here, right? Like, nobody comes over here. And then you have to explain why you were there and what you were trying to do, and you just look like an idiot. And it's funny because most of the time they're ask you like why you were there, but they won't give you a hard time about it. They'll be like, I've done the exact same thing before. It's just one of those things. I may have never died over here, but I've gone off exploring, and they tell you their story because, again, a corpse run is usually not very fast, so there's usually a little bit of downtime, quite a bit of downtime most of the time. And during the downtime, they start talking about their weird experiences that they've gone through. Oh yeah, I died in this cavern, and I couldn't get my body out, and my body fell through the earth, and I had to contact the GM, and the GM ended up putting my body back in the worst spot possible, and he's like, oh, have a good day, and just left him there. And sometimes the GM would restore your body to where it was supposed to be at, but then not tell you that it was there. And you just had to figure it out once he was like, oh, your ticket's closed. And I'm like, yeah, but where's my body? And they don't respond, and you're just like, and then you had to go get a group and get back to that spot. Because again, when you die in a group, chances are the group's going to help you get your course back. For the most part. Not always, but for the most part, they will do that. But if you die and something happens to your body and you have to talk to a GM and get them to pull your corpse out, chances are the group's not going to be there anymore. And if it's not a zone that's very camped, like you kind of just got together with a few, unknown people, a pug, pickup group, and, you died, and then, now I have to sit around for 8 hours waiting for a GM. When the GM finally logs on, there may be nobody in the zone. It may be a zone that nobody goes to ever, and it was like a special thing. And so now, instead of like trying to beg people or ask people in the zone to help you out, you have to leave the zone and go beg people to come to that zone, which is probably out of the way, and hope you get your corpse back. And again, that's just, it brings the community together because everybody pretty much has to have gone through that at some point. And, it makes people very appreciative and very grateful for when people do that to them. And then when they see somebody in a similar situation, they help out because they know what that feels like. And again, it's just, if you don't force people, I think, in video games to be together, because we have been so ingrained with, just years upon years of single player games, because that's all we had for a very long time. We didn't have all these multiplayer games when I was growing up. You had Zelda, and you had Donkey Kong, and you had these great games, but unless you had somebody sitting there with you, they were single player. And even if you had somebody sitting there with you, they were still single player. They were like, okay, I take my turn, you take your turn, I take my turn, you take your turn. Like with Mario, it's like you couldn't play Mario and Luigi at the same time. No. Mario got to play, and then Luigi got to play. I hit the wrong button there. So yeah, we've just kind of been ingrained over time to be very much single player default status, and so unless you're forcing me to be a multiplayer, with other players, I just kind of revert back to that. And I think a lot of people do as well. And that's why I like this game so much, is that it forces you. And now, after so many years, it's one of the things that I love about it the most. And I go out of my way in other video games to try to reproduce that, and it just doesn't work. It's just it's too easy to be by yourself. And because it's that easy, a lot of the time you don't make that extra effort because it is more of an effort to be with other players. It takes a little bit more stress on your part because again, people can just leave whenever they want, and you got to put a group together, and then you got to go to the spot. And I'm making it sound like it's this horrible thing. It's really not. Those things are some of the best things in the game, but it does add more, worry and more difficulty with relying on other people. And it's the same thing in real life. If you can do a job by yourself in real life, most people prefer to do it that way rather than have to rely on somebody else who may or may not show up that day because they're sick or they got family issues or whatever the case may be. And, it just puts more work on your part when they don't show up. But when they do, you can sit there and just, shoot the breeze with them or complain about common difficulty about the job and, oh, this is horrible, and the heat, stuff like that. It makes the time go by faster and gives you, that sense of community. So, but I think we're gonna go ahead and end the episode here, guys. Let's see, how close did we get to level? Oh, no, we're gonna get level. We're gonna get level 5. Here we go. Should be what? Maybe 4 more kills. I'm thinking. Maybe. I mean, you get a decent amount of experience at this level. In fact, it may only be like 2 kills because we're about three little lines away from leveling. Oh, I love her hat. Look at that. She got one of those little bear hats on her. And I think she's going to cast... Oh, she did. Spirit of the Wolf. Fantastic. That is awesome. There we go. Spirit of the Wolf. And I think... Yeah, I'm still using the old Velius AI. And that's why my spells are kind of funky looking. In fact, let me switch over options. Go to load UI, and we're gonna go to, I think it was default old. It may just be default. I don't know why the Velius UI has the wrong looking. Yeah, it may just be default because that's not it. Let's go to default. See if this fixes it. There we go. Yeah, that's it right there. And you'll see the little shoe. That's Spirit of the Wolf. That's classic Everquest. And I don't know why the Velius one doesn't have the right spell icons for it. And I know I made a lot of videos where people are like, oh, your spell icons are wrong. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to fix that. Like, there's no way I can download the right spell icons. It's not a file on the internet that I could find. I did find a few posts where people were saying that you could just copy the spell icon from the default UI and paste them in the new whatever UI that you're going to be using, and that should fix it. And I may try that someday, but I actually don't mind the way this UI looks. It's a little bit more bulky, and it does have some flourish around the edges of the little... And of course you can't have more than one hotbar, so that could be it too, because I know a lot of people like to have quite a few hotbars, and there's tons and tons of UIs out there that you could try. I was actually thinking about trying to find the original UI where it was all blocky and you could only see, a small little portion of your screen, and the rest was all this like gray paneling with this huge chat bar down here on the bottom, and you could only have one chat bar. And oh, there we go. Nice. And I am completely full up on my inventory, so I will have to run back to town. But again, guys, I think we're going to end the episode here. I want to thank you all for watching, and the comments that you guys have been leaving have been absolutely terrific. I love the fact that you guys are getting back into EverQuest and enjoying the game again. We could definitely use you in the community. There's usually around anywhere from 1,200 to 1,500 people on during the day, and around 900 to 1,200 people on during the night. Of course, I live in Central Standard Time. Depending on what country you live in, that may be a completely different time of the day for you. But it's pretty good. I can usually find a group in pretty much any zone if I look long enough. And most zones, I don't even have to look that long. So again, guys, I want to thank you for watching. If you like these episodes, please hit that like button, subscribe. Definitely helps the channel grow, and I greatly appreciate that. Also, if you have comments, as I said before, I love hearing back from you. I most definitely try to respond to every message that you guys leave. And again, guys, I will catch you next time.